All the scholars, there's never going to be agreement among all of them. A consensus of climate scientists say such and such, but that's not all of them.
I understand that's a really good point you're making, and I tend to agree with the sentiment, but there's some things...
climate change.
But there's one thing that I was going to say was that there's something... When I was talking about climate change, I'm not...
That's my exegesis.
Yeah. But, so with Ijma', with consensus, there's a discussion on it, but the point is that there are some things which are definitely consensus. For example, the five prayers a day, yeah? Or Hajj. Hajj is in the Quran.
That is.
So, for example, the five prayers a day, by the way,
Doesn't it say in the morning and the evening and the middle? So that's only 3 in my counting.
Yeah, but the five prayers by name and so on and specifics are not in the Quran.
Can we get back to that which is forbidden?
But you need to get the framework first, right? So
how long is that big framework?
When people say Sharia law, they're talking about what's gone through that framework.
Yes.
Now, invariably,
if it doesn't match the Quran, I would suggest that Sharia is in error in the Muslim.
Well, yeah, that's obviously, but the point is that the ones who make that decision are scholars amongst themselves,
they're
right?
just human.
Yeah, so they all come to conclusions and so on.
Yep.
They have the exegetical schools. They try their best to come to their conclusion and so on. Yep. So now that we've got that out of the way, the question of now marrying. So what is a nikah? A nikah in Arabic language is a kind of aqd, which means it's a kind of agreement.
Yes, like a contract.
Yeah. So the scholars of old, they asked the question: is it possible for someone to have a aqd nikah, which is this agreement to marry, without having consummation or full rights? So, for example, this is where the discussion comes.
Sorry, without having.
Yeah.
So you can't consummate something that doesn't exist. Do you mean can they have get married after they've already?
No. So, for example, the question is, can two people have this nikah agreement?
Marriage without any.
So basically, that person's. It's almost. It works
like a platonic marriage.
No, it just works like an engagement.
Okay.
So the scholars differed on this matter. Yeah. Some scholars said, yeah, you can have it. So, for example, in the olden days, say for example, I had a child, I had a daughter or something, yeah?
Within wedlock?
Pardon?
Within a marriage.
No, let's say I had a 5-year-old daughter.
But I'm saying within a marriage context. A wife had
I had a daughter, let's say a 5-year-old daughter, and I say, well, I've got cancer, or I'm going to go to war, and I think I'm going to die, and so on. So, some scholars said, okay, look, I can draft a nikah agreement between my daughter, who's 5, and a man who's, let's say, 20 years old. But there's no sexual thing that happens, yeah.
But would it eventually become that when she grows
So
of age?
when does it happen? Now the scholars discuss this. They say, for example, Ash-Shawkani says this is not allowed. Ibn Uthaymeen of our present time says this is not allowed. But some scholars of the madhahib said they're allowed. So I said that these contracts are allowed. That, for example, if they get to a certain age, let's say 12, 13, 14, whatever age of ability, they call it qudra, which is ability. Pardon? Ability to accept. No. Ability to have intercourse. Yeah.
Does that include emotional or like is it just physical?
Primarily it's physical, but it does include psychological and mental as well. Because if someone is not of mental age, or they haven't got the ability to, or they're judged by the people, their seniors to not be mature for marriage, then surely they wouldn't be put in that position. Okay.
So what I'd ask is if Sharia forbids marriage, even in maybe 3 of the 5 schools, or if there's any prohibition on marrying a girl before her menstrual cycle begins, yet the Quran says this we find permissible and no man will forbid
Now, what the Quran talks about is divorce, right?
Yes.
So if someone has, the verse you're talking about.
I don't know what he referenced.
No, I don't know about Abbas. I'm sorry, I can't follow different. I can only tell you.
That's what I brought to you.
No, all right. So in chapter 66 of the Quran, وَاللَّائِي لَمْ يَحِضْنَ, which means that the ones who have not menstruated yet.
Jalalain says
all right.
because they are
So let's say that means that they've never had menstruation. Not that they're pregnant, or which it could also mean. Which it could also mean. Yeah, it could. Let's say it means.
Yet menstruated means they
Yeah,
can't
no.
be pregnant. They're
No. Let's say that's correct.
You're
Yeah.
talking about the first and the third category.
No. By the way, some mufassirs have said this means pregnant women.
So they're already included in the.
Yeah, fine. But what I'm saying is, let's take your interpretation, or the interpretation of some of the scholars as well.
Most of them, I would imagine.
Not really,
It
because
says all those who are pregnant.
Fine.
They can't be the same group of people being discussed. It says women who are pregnant,
yeah.
or women who are too old to menstruate.
That's what Hamlin. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. So the ones who have not had menstruation yet. So here, this would refer to prepubescence.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this question of prepubescent marriage, you're correct. Is it prepubescence with intercourse or not? Now, here's what I'm saying is that this can't be, because it's haram. I'll tell you why it's haram.
Is it? So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So I'll give you some references and sources right now. If the woman, no, it's you can go. No, go on. I don't even think they're in English, so I'll tell you and you can check it out. For example, Kitab al-Insaf, written by al-Mirdawi, who is seen as the final opinion of the Hanbali madhab, in his Kitab al-Hudud.
Most of that was in Arabic. I'm just going to go with all right then.
He says, he lists in what he called a chapter of Hudud, which is punishments.
Chapter of what? Sharia
Punishments.
jurisprudence.
Chapter of punishment.
Chapter from the Quran.
No, I'm telling you what the scholars have said, and I'm going to give you.
Chapter of what I'm asking you? Chapter of Sharia.
Yeah, it's a Sharia book, yeah, or Sharia law, yeah. It's what I'm saying is the final opinion. It's seen as the final opinion of one of the schools of thought, the Hanbali school. 4. He says,
That includes Shia.
no.
So there's
Now
possibly
Sunni, and then you have other schools within the Shia. Sunni, there's 4 mainstream ones, yeah. Now, having said that, what he says is that if someone has intercourse in marriage with someone who's a prepubescent, the question is not whether they're doing the right or wrong thing. The question is whether they should be flogged or not, whether they should be whipped or not. And he was saying that they should be whipped.
So it's still prohibited. They're just now questioning what's the appropriate.
Yeah. So in other words, according to al-Mirdawi.
So I would come back to how can they prohibit something which the Quran says.
No, but the Quran never talks about. Sorry to cut you off.
Find the verse.
I know the verse off by heart, right? Yeah. And I can recite the whole surah off by heart. But here's what I'm saying is that from the beginning of that surah, it doesn't say sexual intercourse.
I appreciate that, but
Right,
marriage,
so-
I would say a consensus of opinion is that marriage includes betrothal. Like you were saying, if you betroth people or you feel that you're going to say eventually, can you take this wife for the moment? Can you be a protector, companion, maybe parent figure?
What's your name again?
Okay.
I don't shake hands with women. No, not even. You know this already.
Do I?
Yeah, anyway.
I study you. No,
You've been here
just
already.
the Bible.
But here's what I was going to say to you, right? As I said to you before, in Islam, there are these distinctions. Now you're saying in
I'm saying
culture,
the Quran should supersede them.
the Quran doesn't.
Your perspective.
Listen, very clearly, the Quran never says that nikah yaqtadi al-jima', which means it never says.
Is it a generic verse? Is it saying anything the Quran ordains as acceptable?
Look,
we forbid that.
Let me say this one more time.
We grow.
I just need to make this very. I want to make this very clear for you, right? I've said to you before that this nikah agreement, according to Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, he wrote a book called Al-Mughni, and the chapter is Bab al-Nikah. He mentions that nikah is like aqd, which means any agreement, any business agreement, any deal. Now here's what I'm saying to you is that the scholars of old, they debated on whether or not it's possible. Say, if I got a daughter, I can.
That's betrothal, though, is my
Right.
point. It's
But
not marriage.
whatever.
The
But
marriage ceremony.
the
You're
point.
saying, can you please?
Yeah. No. How? This is the question. Now, what if she gets to the age and she says, "I don't want to get married. I don't want it." Now, Shawkani says, if she says, one other scholar, he says, if she gets to the age that of discernment,
Yep.
and she gets to the age of ability, and she doesn't want to be with this person who her father suited her with,
Yep.
then she can reject it based on the hadith, al-bikru tusta'dhan, based on the hadith that the virgin has to be asked for permission before marriage takes place. So how do they do jama'? Shawkani says that the way he does jama' bayn the hadith, or he puts them together, and the ayah and so on and so forth in the Quran, is that he says that okay, you can have a nikah, technically, with someone who hasn't reached the age of the discernment yet. Yet, when she gets to the age, she can decide whether or not, yeah, number one. Number two, that he can't have sex with her until she gets to the age of ability.
So with arranged marriage, how would that work? That's cultural.
No, that's different. Arranged marriage
So let me get back
is
to
consensual
one
from
of
both
my
sides.
questions from
So
Mohammad.
just your question on chapter 66 verse 5. What I was saying is, even if we take your interpretation as the only interpretation, which it isn't, there is more than one
Three
interpretation.
categories of women.
No problem. Let's take your one as the correct one. So the one of, like, she's never had puberty before. وَاللَّائِ لَمْ يَحِدْنَ. They've never had it before, and it's a strong opinion, in my opinion. Yeah, because it says lem. Lem is usually Arabic in the past. Yeah, no problem. You're right. Now the question is, does that mean that there had to be a marriage of sexual? Right. So fine. So what's the issue?
For a divorce in Western law, at least, there needs to be consummation to need a divorce.
But the Quran says,
if I get married and my husband can prove that we have not consummate the marriage, he can just negate or annul that marriage.
Good.
But my other question is it a generic verse in the Quran that says that which we find permissible, you will not forbid?
The Quran also says that if you divorce your wives and you never touched them before, which makes it possible that you can divorce someone that you haven't had sex with.
But is 65:4 speaking about that? Is the verse? Is
No.
65:4
Chapter 60.
speaking
What?
about
Chapter
that?
66, not 65.
66.
Sorry, 65. So it's the Talaq 65. So 65, verse 4. What it talks about is that it says it's a generic verse,
Waiting period.
right? Generic verse. Agreed.
Well, it's all women of this category.
Yes,
all women of
there you
that
have it.
category. Yeah.
Now, so we say that's a generic verse. The only thing that can do ikhtisas of it is of something which is specifier. So there's two specifiers the scholars use. One, the fact that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if we take the hadith of 6 to 9, that he waited before because he married at 6 and then he consummated 9. So for that waiting period to